Hello everybody. We are live. How are you doing, everybody? Please let me know if you can see me and hear me all good, so we can start with this live. Where are you joining us from? Please let me know. I'm reading the chats and yeah, let's start. All good. Great. Amazing. I see. We are already 64 people. Great. Hi from Germany, from the US, India. Awesome. Okay, great guys. So, you probably know from just, reading the title, today we are going to recreate Figma, the homepage, Figma landing page, their marketing site. So, yeah, and we also here we have John in the comments, managing the comments and adding your questions to a doc where I will be reading and answering them at the end of the call. So yeah, feel free to ask any question you have. So let's change the scene and look at what we will be building today. So today we are going to recreate this Figma.com, their landing page in Webflow. So if I refresh, you see we have some animations like the text here. We also have this cool Nav bar. You've probably seen this once, but then you log in and you don't see it. So you can log out or open also the Figma.com in incognito mode so you can see it. We have these animations, and then here we have kind of this sticky navigation where we can navigate through these beautiful animations. For today's video, we will try to recreate as much as possible, but not like add every single like text and content, piece of content, because I want to be respectful of your time and just get the overall like where we see a point to learn something new. We'll create those, and for the rest you can continue and complete it later. So we will be recreating the Nav bar and maybe this product one, because this is the most complex one among the rest. So we will create this one, and then of course this animation as you see here. So we'll have some interesting thoughts about this, and then also this animation that just came up. This section also is pretty simple but interesting, something that we use in many websites. And then this sticky nav. I guess the nav is the more interesting part here, and yeah, that how it works and how it changes the states, how it navigates. This is interesting, so we might not get to recreating all the details here, but the bulk part and what's really important. Awesome. So I'm going to also read the chats here and there, and yeah, then we continue. Awesome. I see from Russia, Ghana, Serbia. Awesome. A lot of people joining us. We are closing on 100 people. Yeah, feel free to share it with your friends if you haven't already. You can all watch it together, chat in the live chat. Okay, so to start with, if you want to also build alongside with me, you can also start by copying our style guide. So you can find the link to our style guide in the description of this video. You find it there. You can just simply clone it and then build alongside with me. I think that will be also really cool. So I already have done that, but nothing else. So I have a few assets already downloaded, things like the logo, some of the animations, some of the videos. So they are already downloaded, but I haven't done anything else except for preparation. But here in this build, it's basically just our style guide. So we start with here. So let's go to the style guide page, and then we come back here and we delete this. So let's get going. The style guide, here we start by actually trying to style the elements from the very top down, because everything, as you know, cascades from top to bottom and passes the style. So we want to style at the beginning the style guide, all pages, and the bulk part of the style. So we do that and then we go into the details. So first we want to choose the body. Then in the selector, we go to body, all pages, and here we want to change the font. By the way, I also have the font downloaded. So we can start with system UI. We won't go wrong with that, but I'm going to add the font. So if it was too fast, here, add fonts. I'm going to add a new font. Here we can upload a custom font. So if I find the fonts, yes, here we have the fonts, but actually the one that we need are, for some reason, they are not here. I extracted them, so we will find them here. So we want to have white, regular, and in WoW2 format. So this is what I'm going to search for. White medium. I'm also reading the comments. Can you do a tutorial on Framer? Something to keep in mind. Why not? So we can, I found one. This is good. And yeah, so we choose the regular and the medium one just in case. And the WoW2 is, that's fine. So we upload the fonts. Okay, and now they should be saved. So we need to upload them, and now we can also edit them later. Just make sure that the names are correct. Now we head back to our project, and all we have to do is to reload the project. Okay, so now let's go back to body and then body all pages. Here we should have the white. Yes, we do. What else do we want to change? So we change the font. We want to also change the base size. This is the base paragraph size. By the way, to see these sizes and styles on this website, I'm using this extension called Show Me the Style. Show me the styles. So that's an awesome extension. I can just click around and see styles. So we actually have the font size of 18 and also 22. So most places apparently have, well, a mix of those, 22 or 18. We could go with either and then have a variation. So I'm going to go with 18, and the height I'm going to go with something like 1.5 and then dash, because we want it to be unitless. So that's that. And also the color. The color for most of these, I can also copy that directly here. So we can just choose it and copy the color. And we're going to paste that in and create a color swatch. I mean, it's not exactly black, but it calls it black. That's fine. All right, so continuing here, what else do we want to style? So we got the font. We want to also look at the buttons, something like the links. So these are things that we want to style all before actually moving forward and style them as we go, but we want to do them here in the style guide. So we have the button and we also have these links. So the links, they actually are all complete black. So if we look at them, the color, they're like black, and this is the same for this link. So so let's do that. So we can come here, and in the button, here we have the main button. For the main button, let's go with, actually this is fine. So the background, we want it to be black. We want to have rounded corners, something like 8. That looks more like the button we want. And also the text is, let's fix it from here. So I'm going to make it a bit longer, wider, so something like 24. Right now I'm just holding Option or Alt if you are using Windows to do this from the sides. We see that the text is not really aligned. That can be because of this. So let's see if we can fix that, or we create a new button. That doesn't help. For some reason right now it's not exactly in the style guide. So let's say 18 pixels. We could like try to troubleshoot that, but at best for now I'll just do it manually. So I'm going to go something like 8 because I don't want to be waiting here and troubleshooting this. So that looks fine. We can continue. Just reading the comments also. The link to that extension, I can share it later on in the chat because I don't have the chat open here, but it's again called Show Me the Styles. Maybe rems. Rems are also awesome, but that would make things a bit more advanced. So I'm going to continue with pixels because we want to have them in simple. So we want to have it really simple. Okay, so we have the button. Now let's go and style maybe a big paragraph, because as you saw, we have paragraphs of 18 pixels and paragraphs with 22 pixels. So right now we have a large P, so a class called large P, and this is already set to 22 pixels. We can change the height to be, let's say, 1.4 unitless, and that should do it. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so these are the main parts. Now we want to also edit the links. So the links, we can also come here, and on all links we can change the color to be black, the text color to be black, decoration none, and that should do it too. So 18 pixels, and if we look at here, the links are also all 18 pixels and black. Awesome. So now we can actually, we have the majority of the text that we want to use, and as we move forward there might come also like some other little things that we can style. Sometimes we come back to the style guide and do it from here. Some other times we just simply do it on that page. So now let's move back to the home page. We want to delete this. You also see that in the you see it in the text. And now we want to start with adding the nav bar. So we start adding the nav bar, and again we will create this product, this drop down, this cool drop down. So for the nav bar, we are actually going to use, for the start, we're going to use the native Webflow nav bar. There are a few things we want to change here. There are a few things that are not really great about it. First of all, is the container. So this container is a bit limited and we actually don't want it. So let's remove this container. But how are we going to do it? So what we do, we add a div block outside of it, and then we just simply put everything in that new div block in the same order, right? And then we can just delete it. Now we got rid of it. Awesome. This div block, we are going to call it Nav Container. The reason we are giving it a special name is because here you see this is from edge to edge almost. So if we view the site on a bigger screen, we will see it from edge to edge. So because of that, we are not constraining the content of that container to a specific width. So we are going to basically have it unleashed, but with some padding on the left and right. So I'm just going with something like 28, just eyeballing this again. You can be really exact on this, but for now, I'm just going to eyeball that. Now let's actually add the assets. I'm going to add 3 pieces of assets that we will use here. So we have the Figma logo and the 2 images that we are going to use in the navigation. So here we have brand, and here we want to just get the image and drag it inside. Now this is a bit too big. Okay, so let's set constraint to this. So the width, we can say something like maybe 80 pixels. That's still too big. Maybe something like 50. That's better. And now we have this class automatically generated called brand. So that's actually fine. We can leave it as that. We also have some top padding, and we can actually add. So I see the padding. I added it on the Nav Container. It could be on the Nav Bar. It doesn't really matter in this case here. But I guess I'm going to just do this, the top and bottom padding on the nav itself. So you also see that maybe 12. I'm just eyeballing it, or more, 20. Okay. Also about the background color, this is pretty ugly. We can set it to be transparent or white. And this also depends on if we want to later on, for example, do something extra, make it sticky. But transparent is fine in this case. Okay. So this is basically the basic layout, but now we want to add a few other things. So first of all, we have a button here, but also a few drop downs. And again, I'm going to add only this drop down because the rest are simpler and basically the same. So if you can do this, you can also do the rest. Okay, so in order to add the drop down, we have the brand and we have this Nav Menu. And the Nav Menu is actually important because we want to later on add some other elements inside of that Nav Menu. For example, when we have it on mobile, we will have it maybe in a different way. So it's important to know where are you putting the rest of the content. So in this case, we have a button. I'm just going to add it here. And by the end of it, that should be fine. We can also always double check, but let's first give it the button class, and it moves it to the next, line. That's fine. We'll take care of that. We also want to add a drop down. So you find the drop down here. We're going to add it first here, and this Nav Menu. Now we can actually fix it. Why is this happening? We can fix that in a few different ways. I'm going to set it to flex. That fixes it for now, and we can also align it in the center. For something like this button that is in the nav, I would normally add a combo class, maybe to the button or to the links next to it. It would work on both. So for the nav link next to it, we are going to add a bit of margin on the right, or we could also do it on both sides so they are not touching each other there. Okay, now we can also add this nav link class that we made, apply it to the rest, because we want to also, you know, be able to change the margin. So maybe that's too much now, something like 4 pixels, that's fine. And this is now our drop down. So these links that are pretty static, maybe that's like the login or the pricing, these are fine, so we leave them as they are. And we also have this animation. We'll move forward with the more important things, and if we find enough time, I'll try to also show you how to do this. But in short, we can try to do this with shadow, with drop shadow, and then animate the drop shadow. So just a hint. So now let's look at the drop down, how it's made and how we can customize it. I'm also going to check the chat here if there is any specific question. Okay, so awesome. It seems like everything is all right. Nothing has been okay. So the drop down. Looking at the drop down, we want to understand how we can create this. So as you see, we have this border, but we also have this one in the middle. I'll show you how to create this. And if you hover, you see these are not actually clickable. So these are just for information and aesthetics, but these are the actual links. So first we will create the whole thing, like the big, the overall drop down, and then we style what's inside it. So in order to open it, we go here and we click on show. So from settings, and now we can see the drop down list, which we can customize. So here I'm going to set it to display flex, and these links we can later on rename them or delete them, because this is not going to affect us. So first we want to add a div block inside of this drop down list, and this we can call it something like the drop down, we can call it drop wrap, because it is going to wrap these inside. So drop wrap, hard to say. We will need 2 of these, but we'll copy it later. When we create one of them, we'll duplicate. So let's also put the links inside. So just we have them inside, and let's now create the overall aesthetic of this list. So we go to border and we set a 3 pixel border that is black, and the color we want it to be white, and also we can start adding the images on top of here now. So we grab an image, and then we take the image that we just uploaded, and we want to also give this image a specific width, because this is too small. So this would be maybe drop image, and then a width of 250 pixels, and we want to remove the max width, because it didn't allow the image to grow, but now the image can grow. Okay, so the drop wrap, we can also add 2 other pieces of text to it. So one of them would be, well, actually both of them will be just text blocks. So we will call this, we'll say this is Figma, and oh, it went outside of it. No, it should be inside of the drop wrap. I'm just going to copy paste it and take the text from here, paste it, and this one we want to give it a specific class because the text is smaller. So this is normal text, these are normal links, this is roughly the same size, but this is a smaller text, so let's call it small text. We can also call it nav small text if we are just using it there. I'm I'm going pretty simple about like naming the classes, nothing too special, nothing like too fancy, just something that you can start learning with, and something that is not like really difficult to start with. So the text, I guess that's 15 pixels, and I'm just going to choose this gray color. We can also choose, click on the drop image and also add some margin to the top. That looks better. And also not the drop wrap, but the drop down list all together. You see we have some padding, so we want to also add that. So let's say padding from all sides, something like 24 pixels. Now this looks much better. So the drop wrap, as I mentioned, will only duplicate it once we are almost done with it. So we do that now, and you see they go after one another. The reason for that is we didn't change here, we didn't specify this. We actually did, but the horizontal, it was bugging. So anyway, now it's fine. So horizontal, Flexbox, horizontal. Let me remove that. Why was this? You see, I removed the styles and it's still working. So I guess this was like a small bug. It's all right. So we want to add some space between these. We can do that using this gap. So here we can add maybe something like 30, but let's do it in another way. So this drop wrap, we probably need to also add padding to it and maybe remove it from the drop down. So I added the padding to here. We can do it in a, let's say, smarter way. The drop wrap will get this padding. So now they are also spaced from each other. This is just making our life easier. And now the one on the, it actually doesn't matter, but we just choose one of them, and we want to now add this, this line between them. We do that by just simply adding border to one of them. So I'm going to choose the one on the right, call it right, like combo class of right. That should be fine. And then here in the borders, we are going to give it some left border 3 pixels. And now this is exactly, like almost exactly what we want. So right now on the non-state, it's not closing, which it should, because this class is still being specified there. So we just remove that. This can be like a small glitch. You can also play with these to close and hide it, but because I specified the class, it was still showing when we click outside. So that was the reason we could still see it. Because now if we look at this drop-down list, it has this state of open. And I guess this was somehow also applied to the non-open state, but it's fine now. One more thing we want to take care of is the positioning. So the positioning is wrong. So this is already absolute. The drop-down list is absolute, but when something is absolute, it is still relative to something. So here we see it is relative to the body. We want to take its direct parent and make it absolute relative to its direct parent and set its position to relative. You see it's already set as relative, but it's not working. We need to specify it. And now if we look at the drop-down list, now instead of saying relative to the body, it's correctly showing relative to the drop-down. So just something to play with, and now you know. Okay, so now we are going to move this, I guess based on pixels, or you could also do it based on percentages to be more responsive, but here I don't want to waste too much time on that. This will be fine. This will be fine, but you can be a bit more exact. There are a few other things that I want to mention here. So for these links, as you see, the links are not aligned to the left. And if we look at here, you see they are still aligned. But look what is happening here. When I hover in, like exactly here on the border, I'm not even exactly on the word design, but even if I'm around it, it's still like clickable. It's still clickable. And this is a good thing. We want to generally have this. So this is like a small tip. We want to have this. So we do this by having padding. So right now on this, we have, you see this big box around it. It is because, you know, we have this padding. What we could do, we could remove the padding from the left, but then the link won't be clickable like here. Like close to it, it's not clickable. So we don't want to remove the padding. Instead, I don't want to click on all the links. I just one class. Instead, we want to give it a negative margin equal to its padding. So it has 20 pixels paddings. We're giving it a negative margin to count for that, and now it's fine. It's giving that link automatically the drop-down link class, which is fine. So we can also apply this to the rest, or, you know, delete and copy paste. We can also add them here. So here we have 3. On the other one we had 4, and we also need some margin here. The image, we can also change it so it looks nicer. And now if we preview it, you see it is working on click. We can also come to the settings here and open it on mouse hover. So this will trigger the animation on mouse hover. I'm not clicking, I'm just hovering, and it will show up. Okay, I guess I'm just going to change it to be open on mouse click. The icon here, this is like a small detail that we have. I assume you know how to do this, so I think it's a better use of our time to not do that and just move forward with the rest. One more thing I see is the text here is a bit too big, maybe. No, it's actually fine. So it just signed up. That's why sign up. Small, but that's fine. Let's look at the mobile version. You see now everything is inside, and we can actually style this also, like, and completely simplify this. So if we look at how they have it, so everything is simplified, super simple. We can just simply hide the elements that we don't want to show and just simplify this mobile version. But I guess that would also take time, so let's move forward. And I will be also reading your comments as I drink some water to hydrate. Why audio is coming from the left side? Apparently this is a problem. I'll try to check. So or maybe this should fix the problem. This is by default on my mic, and I'm just trying to because we don't want the audio to clip. The audio will be fine on desktop. It's fine if you're using speakers, but if you're using headphones, the audio will be like 20% less on one side. That's for clipping. It's a non-Webflow thing. Okay, it's okay now. Is everything fine? Do you have any like specific question about what we've been doing so far? Is everything fine? Just let me know. Hi from Tel Aviv. Awesome to have you here. How does the hover on the link works? That's again probably a drop shadow. It's not border. Why I'm saying it's not border. So what is Milad is asking is this link hover, and the thing about it is it's animating. It's not like just showing up. And the problem with using border, like if we use border here, it shifts things around. You see, it causes some shifting because border takes space. So we can't use border. We could, but then we have to, on the non-state, let's actually try it. Let's try it because it doesn't take too much time. So let's try it. So on the non-state, right now it's non-hover state, we are going to have border 3 pixels, but it's going to be transparent. So, okay, so here's the problem already. So now we can change it to black on hover, right? So, and we also want to give it some transition so the animation doesn't happen instantly. I'm going to go with 1 second so we see it. But it's apparently, maybe this is just not for borders at all. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so maybe we don't, oh no, this is for opacity. Actually, I did a mistake. So I'm just setting it to all properties so we see this. You see it kind of fades in. What Figma has, it's not a fade in, it's like moving from bottom to the top. There are definitely like fairly easy ways of doing this. I just don't want to put too much time on that because we have to wrap this in a div block and then add another div block that changes height. That's one way of doing this. Another way, which is something that I wanted to try by the end of the stream, but now that we are at it, so let's just try it really fast, is box shadow. So we can say something like 180, and we want to have 0 blur. We can't do this from, so what I wanted to do is to have it from one direction, something like this. Yeah, we can actually do it. We just need to play around with the numbers. So this is 0, so the distance, and now we can change the angle to be 180. 180. Let's see if we can do it this way. So I'm going to not have this, but on hover, actually make it, and let's see if that will grow. Oh yeah, this is growing, but in the opposite direction. So I guess this is also one way of doing it. Or maybe, you see, I'm having fun with this very little detail. So I hope you're at least learning something, because I'm definitely having fun here. So what I wanted to do, not to do anything with border, but actually the box shadow, what if it's inside? Okay, I guess it has to be now from the other direction, 0. And this is on hover. On non-hover, we want it to be also on the inside 0, and just the distance is 0 pixels. Just want to make sure that we don't have any border animation. So let's see if it works. Then now, oh, it's working. It's working. That's it, guys. I guess one like small issue which makes us to go with the other option that I said, which is using a div block. So that would be, you increase the elements from 1 to 3, because it will be the link, the div block that wraps them, and then the div block inside. So you are just increasing the elements. It's not a big deal at all. It's just that you have to go that step in order to not have it this wide. This is pretty wide right now. All right, so we are actually behind the schedule. So let's continue. But now, you know, just box shadow, inner shadow did work, outer shadow was like growing towards outside, which makes sense. But inner shadow, and then let's say not 1,000 milliseconds, but something like 400. It is my favorite, and maybe something like is in out. I'm not sure if with this rate we'll be able to finish. So let's continue at least with this part, because this is also very, very interesting. All right. So we want to add a div block here. We want to continue with the rest of the build. We are going to call it something like section maybe. Or we can call it something that we see in the navigator, hero section. And the height will be, or let's not give it a height. Let's define the height by its children. So inside of it, we are going to have a div block. I'm adding div blocks using Command E. So just a tip there. We are going to call this div block hero content. Okay, and the hero content has something a bit special. We want to have it as a max width of, let's say, 700 pixels, and then we want to have it centered. Why 700 pixels? Because we want to reduce the amount of space that this text and, you know, the overall heading is taking to 700 pixels. That's a rough number that I'm just guessing. But we'll move forward with it. So now let's talk about something really interesting that Figma is doing, and something potentially not good. So I'm using another extension. Guys, I love extensions. You don't believe it how much. So I'm clicking on another extension called Headings Map. So Headings Map extension, as you see here, it gives me a map of all headings used on the website, and it tells me that they don't have an H1. Like, what are you doing, Figma? This is actually pretty hilarious. So let's try this on apple.com, which is my favorite place to try this extension on. Their H1 is Apple. They can afford this, because your H1 should be something that explains your tool, your service, whatever, explains that page. Actually, you have to have one H1 per page. And for Apple, it's called Apple. We don't see it because they've hidden it with CSS. So the heading exists, a screen reader can read it, but we don't see it, like visually hidden. And they, in the code, by the way, they literally call it visually hidden, the class, just something fun. But Figma, they don't have an H1, but they actually do have an H1, I believe so, on the tablet version. So, oh no, they don't have it. So, I mean, how they have an H1 if you look at the code. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. So if you look at the code, they have an H1 tag, right? But the H1 tag is like visually, when we look at it, is this video. So this is maybe something, I don't know. This heading map says they don't have an H1, and this is a red flag because screen readers probably won't be able to read it if this heading map can't read it. Okay, so this shouldn't be something, this is like a bad practice that we shouldn't follow, okay? We are going to recreate this, but I would say a better way of recreating this is to follow Apple here, to have the H1 visually hide it, so screen readers can still read that text, but like visually it will be this video. So right now this is a video, and the video also is not great. So from the stream you probably can see it fine because it's not really sharp, but on my display this text is definitely not like super sharp. The reason for that is it's still a video. So what we did, I asked a good friend of mine to recreate this animation. So this animation in After Effects, and then have it as Lottie, because that way we can have these not actually as, you know, pixels and as video, but as SVG. So a Lottie is like sort of an SVG, at least in this case. So let's add that. In the assets panel, I'm actually going to add, I don't know if so in the downloads here, oh, actually, yeah. Here, and now we have this Lottie, which we can just simply add. And now let's preview it. So the font is not exactly the same, but the animation, he made it to be almost identical. And this is, believe me when I say this, much sharper on my screen. I don't know how sharp you see it. Okay, so now that we have the text, let's like the video animation, let's add the rest, and we will also animate this later on. So next we have a paragraph. So let's go fast at this. This is going to be actually fast. Okay, that's good enough. And we also want to add this get started, which is just this button. I'm going to paste it in right after. Now you see why this is happening is because this hero content is display block. It's like the default. We are going to change it to flex vertical, and then we can center things. We can also change this paragraph from here, from the parent, change it like this. But right now it's the text is still too wide. So we are going to give it a class of hero p. Maybe I wouldn't do this for a client. I would probably create a global class, but in this case it's fine because we don't have a huge project with thousands of classes. So this is actually fine. And we are going to give it a max width. So the max width of, let's say, 40 characters. So CH for characters, this is going to limit the text by amount of, by the size of 0 characters in that font, in that size. So this is actually a very cool way of doing this, and probably my favorite here for the max width character is my favorite unit. Now we see this is like adding extra space. It's because of the aspect ratio of the animation. So we can actually here we can just simply add negative margin. This adds a small issue, but the devil is in the details, and this is important because here I want to also show you something that you should be mindful of. Let's say you do this way, the exact way that I did it, but then your client wants to click on this text. They can't because it's underneath this Lottie animation. So there is an easy way of fixing this by giving this position relative, and it puts the z-index automatically higher, or you can just manually set it to be higher, and it's the same for the sign up button, or we can, no, let's just do it like this. So hero, and this is just to tell you that to be mindful of this as you know, bringing elements underneath the others. So right now, if we look at it, if we go to preview, we see this animation happens and then it's gone. The reason for that is the animation stops and then goes away. So we want to set an animation here on page trigger. We can do it on page load when the page starts loading, and then we want to start an animation. We can call it hero Lottie, and here we want to choose the Lottie animation and add a Lottie. If we don't click on the Lottie here, you don't see a Lottie option, but so that's something you have to be mindful of. You click on the Lottie and then boom, you have the Lottie animation. And so at the beginning, we can set it also as an initial state, and we can change this based on percentage. So we say 0% is the initial state as the page loads, and then in whatever time, so the time we can actually also get it from here. It's happening over 10.32 seconds. So we can say something like 11 seconds. We want it to go to not 100, because you see this depends on how the animation is made in After Effects. There are like some empty space afterwards sometimes. So we finish it at 90. So now it's probably also slower. Not by a lot, but it's a little bit slower. Okay. So I'm also reading the comments. If you have any question or comment specifically like about this, the live will be saved, guys. You can watch it later. Are sign up and contact align? Good question. I think they were aligned. Maybe they are not aligned anymore because of the changes we made. Not sure. Will that change it? No. I think they are aligned. If not, we can fix them. It should be a pretty easy fix. But for now, let's move on with the rest of the build because it's more important. So let's add another section. I'm going to call this, okay, I didn't want to do this. So just a div block. We can call this also like hero image. This is actually a video. So let's play this. And Figma is doing something really interesting about this. So you see, it looks like this whole thing is a video, but the fact is this is only the video, the rest is an image. So to create this, we have the hero image, but then we want to put it in like a sort of container. The reason for that is we want to have this, okay, so I was showing you the wrong screen. Now we want to put it in a container, because as we make the container smaller, this kind of like stays in the same place, and if it's really small, you see it crops the image from here. So we can do this in multiple ways, but let's just add another div block. And here we can add container, and we actually have a container already for us. So let's add some space here to the hero section. We can do it on the hero section. We can just add here like 100 pixels. Then I'm going to also add another div block here at the bottom and call it space, and give it a min height of 100 VH. This is just for space, like empty space at the bottom of the page, so we are not constantly looking at the bottom of the page, right? Okay, so inside of the container, we want to add that image. So that image that we see, we want to add it, but there is some like a small twist to it, because this has to be aligned to the right side of the container. So in order to do that, I'm going to add an image, or just directly from here, I'm going to upload it. So this is the background image. Actually, it's in WebP. Right now it takes the full like container, but what we want to do is we want to align it from here and then let it grow out of the screen towards the left. So in order to do that, we need to take the container. I'm going to add a combo class called relative, and I'm going to set it position to relative, because I want to set the image to be position absolute. So the image will be hero image. This is actually the name of the name of the section. So this is going to be hero. Let's rename this hero image section. I was not really exact about this, but now it's better. So hero image. All right. So what we have that container with the image inside of it, which we want to set to absolute, and set its position to be 0% of that like side. But now you don't see any change, because the max of that image is still at 100%. If we change it to none, it grows, but it grows too big. And here we don't want to, we could, but we don't want to set a specific width, because of the way we want to make this like kind of responsive, but also allow it to grow out of the screen. So we want to set it actually based on height. So we can say 50 view W on height. So the height of this image is 50% of the width of the screen. I hope this makes sense. So the height of this is actually determined by how wide the screen is getting. And the reason why we want to do this is like better control. This way we can easier control this image and its like width, and not make it like grow super big or like super small. So we are controlling it by height and using viewport width. 50 was too much, maybe 46 or even 45 is fine. And now we are going to add another element on top of this. So this like video, this is the video that is playing as, you know, but on the background. So in order to add that video, I'm going to actually use an embed. So the video is an embed video. We could use a Webflow like native video component, but that will probably make it too blurry, and the embed is already easier. So I already have the code. You can get the code from just looking at the website and the inspect. So just to show you also the video, this is the image and this is the video, and this is like the code I'm just copying. With a small change, I'm adding width of 100% and height of 100% to it, so I can control it. So right now you see it's playing automatically, but this is not what we want. So the embed video, we are going to say hero animation video. I'm just being really expressive about these classes, so You can name them however you desire, and this one is also going to be absolute. So that's that, and now we want to also kind of like constrain it so it's not taking too much place. So right now it's taking too much place. As I mentioned, we change these to 100%, 100%, this way to a way to control it easier, and now we are going to control it. How? Just by changing the size. So technically this is a video in a div block because we are using an embed element. An embed element is basically a div block that has some code in it. So as simple as that. So here we want to go at something like 46 viewport width. We're doing this because that's what I find to be like the right like proportion to the background. And now here I'm going to space it, actually not based on pixels but based on viewport width. So something like 5, 10, 15, right? So this is like spaced almost correctly. Maybe something like smaller, just incrementally, just so we perfect it. And if we change it, you see it's staying there perfectly fine. I'm talking about here, this edge, not the bottom. We'll fix that too. So we want to move this top. There are a few ways we can do this. We could like have it like from the top, we can like go to negative, but this is not going to be really responsive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going actually to move it by the amount of width again. So something like -40 viewport width. So right now you see it stays stationary because the rest of the elements are also based on viewport width. So what I'm going to do is just dial it down to the perfect amount. You can play around with the perfect number, but that's basically fine. So if we preview, see the animation here plays, and this also comes up, but this is not exactly responsive, so we need to fix that. So I'm just trying to see what we have. So we need to, do we have the container working correctly? The container is fine. This shouldn't, like on bigger screens, on smaller screens it's fine. On two big screens it goes, okay, so there is something not sticking. Okay. Well, this image is, it's actually, it should work. So we not let it grow. Maybe, okay, I see. The problem is we have the container that is too small. We can use a bigger container that will solve the issue, but I guess probably that's not a good use of time. Should we fix this responsive, or should we go to the next one and build this and hopefully a little bit of this, so you get the idea? Because there are, I see a lot of questions that we want to also be able to answer. Okay, we continue. Awesome. Okay, guys. So let's not get too bogged down on fixing bugs. It actually works on my version, on a version that I did like early testing, but the container I use the same container that I used for the rest, but that's the reason. So we should fix the container, but just so you get an overall idea, we want to align things to the left and let align things to the right and let things on the left to basically grow based on the screen. So you get the idea. So let's go with the next one, which is a section that is fairly used like quite often. So right now we have this section, and because this section doesn't have a height, let's give it a min height of 90 VH. No, actually we did something else. So we did 46 VW, right? So let's give it something a bit bigger, like 50 VW width for the images section. And next we have, the next section that we can work on. So this is going to be logos section. And this is particularly useful in like many websites because this is a layout we use quite often. So, and it's pretty easy to do. So we add the section. Inside of the section, we are going to add the container that we have. This is our standard container. We could put things directly in the container, but that creates like extra complexity. So just add another div block. So we have the logo section, the container, and then inside of it, we have a section, a container that is going at a wrapper basically. So this is going to be the content wrapper. And in this content wrapper, we want to basically put everything in it. So let's put stuff inside of it, and then I'll show you a few like interesting tricks. So we start with adding a paragraph. Again, I'm using shortcuts everywhere. So Command E to basically find things. So we have this text, and we can say this is, we give it a specific, this is smaller, right? Or this is actually fine. So let's give it a class of logos P, because we want to set its max width to something like 35 characters or even less, because this is how we want to control how the line break works. Actually in 2 lines, so that it's perfectly in 2 lines. That's fine. And inside of it, like inside the content wrapper, now we want to add the logos. So for that, I'm going to upload the logos that I have already downloaded. So these are the logos. Let's just add them. And I'm going to give this one a class of maybe not social, but like clients. Are these clients? Yeah, these are clients. Clients logos. For now, it's actually fine, like this size and everything, but in case we need, we could like control it. Anyway, so I'm going to add R5, and then we have that CTA arrow. So this would be another div block. So we are going to add a div block, and we call it CTA arrow wrap. And this CTA arrow wrap, we can say something like 60 pixels by 60 pixels. We want to give it, right now it doesn't have a background color, it just has this border. So we are just going to give it a background of white actually, and then the border of 1 pixels, but we want to add radius. We want to add 100% dial in, and now you see it's quite big. So let's dial it to maybe 45 actually. Let's say 44. Let's not get too bogged down here. Here I want to show you like two nice tricks, one after another, okay? So right now we have an arrow inside of this circle and we want to animate it. We can complicate our life by adding like the arrow as, let's say, a separate image, and then you have to switch them. Or you might be already advanced and say, well, for this one, we are going to use an SVG that we can also animate, like animate its color, because change the arrow changes in color. That would be also a small move. So the problem here is, like, the small problem here is that the arrow actually moves, and because of that we have to use Webflow Interactions. Or actually maybe we can even skip it, but I'll show you the two tricks. So inside of this wrapper, I'm going to add, I'm just reading the chat, and you're saying if I should use grid because the layout is not correct and maybe this is bothering you. So let's fix the layout and then focus on the two like small tricks to get this arrow. So for the layout, we have the content wrapper. We can set it to grid, or we can set it to just simply a Flexbox, and then, you know, space things around. We could space them around or in between. With grid, we can actually add this space, these like two spaces, easier. But I'm just going with Flexbox. It's simpler, so I'm going with Flexbox, centering everything. Let's add some padding. We don't see the padding really well because we want to add the border. So a border of 2 here, and radius of, I don't know, something like 12 maybe. That looks about right. And now we can add more padding on top and bottom, and also here. Okay, so this is a bit bigger than what they have, but that's, I guess, is fine. In order to get those extra spaces, we can just simply add more like margin here. So I'm going to add 24 on this and 24 on this element, so on the opposite sides, to basically push the logos in between. So I guess this is now better. I also see that, okay, this is center aligned, so that's fine. So now let's get at the two small tricks. One of them is not really particularly used, not too often, but we can add a div block. So we can add a div block anywhere and start typing, and it changes it to a text block, because a text block is basically like a div block with some text. So that's a small tip. Another thing is the arrow. As I mentioned, we can use an SVG, or we can, instead of an SVG, we could use like 2 images to switch them with Webflow Interactions, but a simple one would be arrow symbol. So we can actually just copy this. I'm just Googling arrow symbol, copying this and pasting it in the div block. So you see it changes the div block into a text block. It also has this bold in it. So I guess I can get rid of that because we don't want that bold effect. So, all right, now. So let's get this CTA arrow wrap and make a Flexbox, center everything. And this one is the arrow text. Change the line height is the problem, and you see here we can change the size and it just increases the size, like the font size, because this is basically a text. So I'm going to add some top margin to accommodate for that problem. We could fix this in another way, but this is like a fast way. All right, so on the CTA arrow wrap, we want to also set a hover animation, and on the hover animation we want to change the background from white to black and the text color to white. So the text is inside of that div block, so it follows the parent's order that says now the text has to be white. So on hover we have this. I mentioned that we might be able to also create that like pushing effect. I'm not sure, but maybe with hover, yeah. So the fun thing about this is, yeah, it's working. So we just need to add some animation, then I will show it to you. Then maybe we are, so the transition, we can do it for all properties. And 400 milliseconds. And if we preview, you see on hover, actually it also pushes the block. And why I'm really geeking out about this, because this is like a mix of nice tricks that allow us to create to go a bit more creative about something that otherwise we had to, let's say for this, we would have to use Webflow Interactions, which is fine and really powerful. But for something this small, adding extra JavaScript that would be in the Webflow Interactions, as you add animation, you add more JavaScript. For a small thing like this, it won't affect the website load at all. But just so you know, for like bigger projects, these things will compound and add up. So I would say if you can find an easier, simpler way, why not? So that's it. And this is, I believe, a really nice trick. Okay, I'm going to drink some water and see, we're already past 1 hour mark, and I guess I geeked about like too many details maybe, or like explained. I hope this was still fine. So we probably can't move forward with the rest, maybe for another video, but I can show you a preview of it, because as I mentioned, I did some prep. Just reading your comments, if you have any like specific question, if you're enjoying, if everything is fine. My friend. If you wrap the logos in another div, yeah, that's definitely possible. I'm just, you see in some places I'm like going into very much details, and some others I'm just leaving it. But yeah, you could put these in another div block and then control the spacing, or have the whole thing as a grid, which is what I would probably do for a client. But here we are just having fun with different ways. The live will be saved and you can watch it later. Okay, so I'm also going to look at the comments. The live will be. Yes, so I see a lot of questions regarding the stream being saved. Yes, and if you actually go ahead and go and create the entire page, because you'll have more time than 1 hour, I hope, and then share it with us. On social media, you can tag us, Flux Academy or Ron Segal, or you can tag me, and please do that, and we'll also reshare it. This is pretty valuable. Just Imagine you're talking to your potential client, your new potential client, you're just new to the game, and they want you to show some work you've previously done. You just pull off Figma.com. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? And as you see, it's not impossible to get it done, even if you're not really seasoned. You can still move forward and actually get something like this done, and this will be a really nice piece of work in your case study. Okay, so reading more. Why am I using div blocks only, not sections and containers? And then heading, for example, like headings are actually super important. Here, as I mentioned earlier, I would definitely use an H1. Yeah, so I guess we are going at QA right now. Before we go at the QA, I want to show you like the prep work I did. So to show you that it is possible and it is rather simple. So to create this, and I will show you like the essential of it in 2 minutes, basically. So a few things that are worth note taking is this like navigation that is sticky. So then the navigation, just so you see here, I'm just going to close the layers that we don't need. The navigation is set to sticky. This one, yeah, it's set to sticky with 40 pixels on top. So 40 pixels before ending the screen, before reaching the end of the screen, it kind of sticks. And then as we move forward, we see basically these being animated. You see this is not going away because I was playing around with it, but here's the idea. So about how these basically turn on. So these are normal buttons. So you can do this with buttons, with links, whatever. You do a page in-page linking. So this is linked to a section called build. So section called build is, I guess, this one. Yes, this section here is called build in the ID. So we can come to settings and change it here. And whenever this reaches that build section, it turns on. Why? Because Webflow automatically adds this current state. This is very much similar to this state of open we had here. You remember? So here we said on this drop down we have a state of open. You see it's in green. In this case, it is a current link, which is the same if you're on another page or on the same page. So this will be added, and here you can just simply change the look of that link, and that will be applied. So when you reach that point, when we reach any of these points, these will get animated. And again, as I mentioned, I played around with it, that's why it's not going away. But as you see, the design turns off and then build turns on, and these are also navigatable. So just like the Figma website, these are also navigatable, as simple as that. So I would say making this is interesting, and now you basically know how to do it. So you know that part. And then we also have these videos. So the videos are just similar to the video on top, the one you see here, with one like simple difference. So here we are actually adding an animation. So this is while scrolling animation. As we scroll, we change the opacity of these different videos. The reason for that is, so let's look at here. As we scroll, these change, right? So the way we do this is by adding just basically like key points or keyframes here in the timeline, like as we scroll based on percentage. So let's see it as a preview. So as we reach different points, you see it here. These turn off and turn on exactly based on scroll, and that's how it's actually done, as simple as that. So there is nothing really complex about this part. It's just a lot of content that you paste in, and then you just develop the whole thing based on percentage. All right, so I hope this is like giving you a good enough idea for how to continue with the rest. And as I mentioned, please mention us, please just share your work if you decide to recreate this Figma homepage. You can also continue and, let's say, create the rest after this. So just so we have a look at it here, this is not really complex. We have actually videos on this on our YouTube channel, which Aaron did. You can search for that. Maybe the video is called Infinite Marquee or Infinite Slider. You can search for it with the word infinite. You can find it. And the rest of the page is actually very, very simple. So there is nothing really special. All right. So it's already long time. So let's get into the QA. And yeah, I have the QA from John. He's been adding them to the document, but I will also read the chat. So please feel free to just add any question you have. Let's change this. Okay, back. And let's talk Webflow. Any question you have? Start with the first one. Okay, how do I center the dropdown on every screen size? I would go with centering it based on viewport width or with percentage. So this is Nico Ziegler. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. That's how I would do it. In this case, we just did it based on pixels, but that's not the best way of doing it. How do they align every drop down? So that's also the same question. So I answered that already. But it's actually not complex. You can do this based on percentage, based on the percentage of the drop down. Why do you use div blocks only and not adding sections? So this refers to, let me show my screen again. This refers to here, these elements. As you saw, I'm just using div blocks and not section, container, grid, or column. So let's talk about these four and answer this question once for all. Never ever use columns, okay? They should actually delete it. I'm considering making a Chrome extension, just not letting you see this. Just kidding. I'm not doing this actually for real, but I was actually considering it because you should not use columns. They are old technology done. Grid, as you see, so let's just see here, we can click flex or click grid. So I don't see any reason to use grid. That was not in the question, but just so all of these are together. The container, the Webflow container used to be super limited when I started with Webflow. They changed it a little bit. Now it's not as limited, but it still has some pre-stylings applied to it, just a little bit. And I just don't like it, and there is no like good reason to use it except its look. So just to drop it here, the icon here looks different. That's the only reason you would I would like use it, but no, not really. So not really helpful. Div blocks are doing the same thing, and section is the same thing. So actually sections are not super limited. There is only one limiting factor about sections, is that you can't put them inside each other. You can't nest them, which I see why Webflow is doing this for beginners. It's good actually, but as you get more advanced, there is no reason to use any of these So I would highly suggest you to just use Div Block because they are the same. The thing about sections is that if you come to the section and look at the ID tag, here look at the tag, it's a div block. It's not even like set to section by default. So again, one more reason why sections are just basically div blocks with some Webflow rules applied to it. Therefore, I wouldn't really consider using them. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. And then there was a question about the heading. As I mentioned, the heading that should be used here. Figma is not using it, at least I don't see it. That's a red flag definitely, but these would be headings. So this would be an H2 using headings map again. You see this is, yeah, explore ideas together. This is an H2. So you see they have a lot of headings, and if we would get to this place, we would also use H2s here. For the document outline, it's super important to have them in a logical way. How do you know when to use grid or Flexbox? So I was actually using way more grid previously because Flexbox didn't have its, this new flex gap. So let me change this back. So we have this gap. We didn't have this. So in order to get this gap, I'm also answering your question. We had to use the gap from grid. Grid had gap, but Flex didn't. But since a few months ago, Flexbox has gap as well. So now we have one less reason to not use Flexbox. So when we have content in one direction, so either it's horizontally or vertically, I said it in the wrong way, but horizontally or vertically, we have content one after another, we use Flexbox because it's actually simpler. It's simpler and it's also really easy for making it mobile responsive. Grid is, well, if you have something that is more complex, like the layout is floating in 2 dimensions, or you have overlappings, that's also super important. So if you have content in 2 directions, right? It's going from left to right and then from top to bottom at the same time, or you have overlapping, so an image is overlapping on something, for example, or you have empty space in between. So with grid, you can actually, so what am I doing here? So with grid, you can actually have one of these cells empty. You have to take the items inside and move them manually, but then you can have empty space. That is also one reason why you would use grid. So yeah, basically here you have it. With grid, you can create more complex things. With Flex, it's more one-dimensional, but it's still very, very useful. Okay, so reading more of your comments. So can we create a website with Webflow, publish it, and then users can come, sign up, having user pass, etc.? I guess this question is referring to a possibility called user authentication or just member logins. This is when you sign up on a page, you sign in, then you have your own dashboard. So with Webflow, we have actually, we go to the marketing page. So the marketing page here under product, we have memberships, which is still in beta. So we have this, but it's not available yet, but it's super promising and I can't wait to get my hands on it. So yeah, with this, you will have all the possibilities to design whatever you want with gated data. So you basically tell these are free tier users, they can see these things, And these are like another tier. They can see another level hidden behind payment gates. Okay, so I tried Figma, and for me it's too slow and iterating to use it in a fast workflow. So because there are two things here actually. Yes, we are going to wrap it up. This will be the last one, I guess. So Figma it's not about like how fast you can be with Figma. If you're like new to it, you're definitely not fast. But the power of Figma is to have the possibility to iterate. So you create one version and then the next version you create takes you less than 1 second. Another thing is we were slow to create the hero section because I've been explaining everything. I did the whole thing alone in less than 1 hour to the, the example that you saw. So it can be actually super fast, and you are faster with a builder like Webflow than you are with code, definitely. I would take on a challenge with somebody who, does dev work, because I believe Webflow is much, much faster. All right. Okay, so we are wrapping up. Thank you everybody for joining. I don't see any other questions. I hope this was fun for you as much as it was for me to explain and also explore little details. Yeah, we should wrap up. If there is no other important question, we'll wrap up. Okay, so thank you everybody. This is it, and I guess I'll see you in another video. Take care. Bye bye.